6.
You're good. Stop, record. Looks like it's going.
Their spare agenda.
Okay, here we go. Call to order. Any guests, public comment, please? Hearing none, we're going to start our presentations in a moment. At the end of this meeting, we're going to have an executive session. We're going to go into executive session, and then when we come out of executive session, we will be adjourned. So, let's start with the new business. We have the bikeways crossing lights at Depot South. Welcome. Yep, that's fine. And would you identify yourself, please?
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman, fellow members, my name is Paul Gazai from the Bikeways Committee. I'm here today to discuss the application that's in front of you to install our 6th bike crossing light at Depot Road. That's on the south side for an estimated of about $27,000. Always as our goal is to identify ways to improve safety, bicycle safety. And I think this is a absolutely, important thing for us to have for all the bikers. We've received recommendations of doing the Depot Road from the Harwich Safety Committee, from Link Hooper from DPW, also our town engineer, Griffin Ryder, and Ed McManus, our selectman, which you'll find at the very tail end of the application that I submitted. You've granted us approval for the last 5 years. Lights on Great Western, Route 39, Queen Anne Road, Pleasant Lake Ave, Depot Street on the north side, and basically I'm looking for your approval for this today. Any questions?
Okay, we'll open it up to the board. Robert?
When you go out to bid, you always use the same specification for the same company? Because I think there are more companies in it than there were.
There are, I have to admit, I'm not part of the bidding process. I know that, now Griffin would be doing all of that, and he does it in conjunction with Sean. I don't know how many he goes out for bid for. I assume legally, I think it's 3 or more. However, we do like using the same systems. They're consistent, they're easy. Sean and his group, are used to using the systems and understand them. But I can't tell you whether anything from that perspective. Over my pay grade.
Robert, all set? Donna?
Hi.
How you doing? Good.
How many more of these are planned?
There's actually 4 more planned.
Okay.
If I could add them all, that'd be wonderful.
Well,
Usually I've been doing 1 a year.
And is there a reason why you're doing 1 a year?
They're $27,000 each,
Yeah.
and that is the only reason. I figured it's just not personally or us as a group, as a committee, it's easier to get a few dollars than looking for $120,000 from you
Yeah.
to do them all. Ultimately, it'd be a lot easier on me and on our committee to do it all at one time. So that's kind of the only reason. The next ones that we got to plan, and that's why we met with the safety committee this year also, was just wanted to be sure we're all in sync with them as far as, next year I was thinking, or not I, as a group, Route 134, Harwich Center here, and then Oak Street, and then Headwaters, and I don't know how we would do Lothrop yet, but Lothrop's pretty much our last one in Harwich.
Yeah, I actually think you can get a better price by doing more than one at once. I only know this because I purchased the bike lights for Brewster. We did 4 of them at once, and actually got a really good
Good buy.
price for them. I don't know what type of system are you using right now?
Not the one that Brewster has,
Yeah.
I know that. And the only thing that I was told over the past is they like this system because there's a lot less, I'm gonna call them less positives, you know, with lights that go off by
Right.
accident,
Yeah.
you know, or they're going off and nobody's there.
Are they manufactured by one company?
Yeah,
And
crossing,
distributed?
oh, my notes, crossing lights, crossing alert systems in Rhode Island, I believe. And they're all from the same company.
And then the DPW does the installation
Yes.
for it?
Yep.
Okay.
Now, if your board wouldn't mind, I would love to, well, whether this year is too late, but maybe next year, have the last four all in one.
Well, has your committee had any discussion about the continuity factor of when people, particularly people who don't live here, are crossing at bike lights? Now, throughout the towns, a lot of people are putting the bike lights in,
Mhm.
so I just think doing them one at a time is,
Well, at least we've used the same system.
no, I don't mean the system, I mean for people who are using the bike trail, right? They
Oh,
get used to
gotcha.
the fact that
Understand.
they're coming to an intersection and there are lights there.
I don't think we've ever discussed that, to be very honest with you, you know?
I mean, that's
But I
part
think
of
the intent, of course, I've only been on the committee a couple of years now, 3 years maybe. And, but I think the intent was always, you know, it's a large chunk of money to be spending all at one time. But yes, instead of spending, and I think the lights themselves with the two warning systems are like 24/5. And yeah, you could probably get it for 20 grand apiece or less. If you did 4 or 5 at one time.
Okay, thank you.
But,
John?
So, just to clarify, the Depot Road, Depot Street
Okay.
always confuses me.
Me
Just-
too.
And calling it Depot Road South, if it's where I think it is, I just never hear it referred to that way, but you mean right up the street from Buca's, right?
Correct.
South Harwich,
Correct.
Depot Road in South Harwich.
Well,
Oh,
it's
Depot Road,
confusing
South
to me.
Harwich,
And then I
okay.
go over on the Dennis side and I go on a fork of the road
Yeah.
and Depot Street goes this way and Depot Road goes this way. Yeah, it is very confusing.
So, these lights, I don't know whether I recall correctly from previous presentations that, do these things communicate with each other, or is there some
What we
communication
have.
goes on with those lights?
Yep, we can get, there was new software put out, I can get basically head count data from each one. And this year, we've got one, basically one PC that Sean uses at DPW. And he is now has that one system. I've got a handheld, actually, it's in his hands right now, but a handheld that will go to each light and kind of download the information. And then I can download, you know, the software, the data to a spreadsheet, and I get it in raw data. I think I just figured out just a while back how to really concisely put it together so it's, I'm going to say user-friendly. And it's looked really good the last time I saw it, you know, but like I said, it's something that they're kind of intelligent systems to some degree, but they're not, like Brewster doesn't have that
Right. Yep.
at all.
That's true.
You know, and most don't. I'm not sure, to be honest with you, in the future, you know, how many, it's good to have it at every intersection to see who's going through it at what time, but it creates some nice data. The last time that we did the research just a while back, we estimated about 100,000 coming through Harwich area.
Over the course
A
of
lot
the
of
season?
lot of bikers come through.
That's
And-
significant.
It was an estimate.
So, when you say you have a handheld, this is some wireless connection that gets made
Correct.
between, but you have to be right there. It's not
Right there, right near,
not
in,
a
yes,
distance
correct.
thing. And so, is that a reason why you need to, or it's better to be buying from the same source because it's one wireless thing? This isn't some industry standard thing, is it?
My
This
personal
is-
opinion, yes, I mean, we understand the system. If we went to another source, I guess I'd recommend at some point not to have the head count, because then it would get very confusing, similar to like Brewster, where, they, you can get it from many different positions throughout Harwich, but if you have them all, you gotta go to each one, and if you don't have some that collect data and some that don't collect data, I don't know if it would get confusing or not. And that's something I would have to address with our committee.
Okay, so, and then what about maintenance on these things? Or do you get some kind of maintenance contract as part of this price? Or can you tell us what kind of maintenance costs you anticipate and how you anticipate covering those?
To my knowledge, Sean, our DPW does all the maintenance on the systems. I'm sure, I don't know the guarantee or warranty that we have with the systems, off the top of my head. I could
Okay,
find
so-
out and get back to you if need be.
I imagine that there are some maintenance tasks that DPW can take care of absolutely, but there's electronics in these things and if some chip fries in it. I don't imagine
Yep,
DPW
there's-
is gonna be fixing that. So that's sort of more what I'm asking about is what happens, I mean, electronic devices fail.
Yes.
We all know that, right?
Yes.
So what happens when one of these things fails? How do you, have any of them, have there been any failures? Had there been any?
We've had we haven't, to my knowledge, we haven't had any failures.
And how many years has that been going on?
This will be our sixth one.
Okay, so it's
that I'm
6
a-
years.
Yep. And we've had false positives that have happened.
Yeah, but that's something different, right?
That's something totally different. Sean goes out, he tries to, because of the storms and things of that nature, that you get these poles that are gonna wobble or the actual camera's gonna, move on you or whatever. And, he has to go readjust things.
So there are cameras on these things.
I'm saying, I know I said camera, but it's like a beam. It's only doing, when I say head counts, it could be a large animal. Something that's going to break the beam.
Oh, so when you say 100,000, you don't actually know 100,000 what?
No, I do
So-
not.
But you say 6 years, but
That's correct. I mean, it
the
doesn't,
same
it
raccoon.
doesn't, it doesn't distinguish between
Game
a
trail.
body walking
I,
or someone on a bike,
and,
or a deer walking
But
through.
generally speaking, for the hunters in the room, game trails aren't following human trails, or human bike trails.
Correct.
Just so we understand that. Moving on.
so, but the first date you have here on this list is 2008 Great Western Crossing Lights. So
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing you.
in your proposal, you list
Yes.
CPC funds used for bike crossing safety improvements.
Mm-hmm.
And the earliest one here is 2008 for Great Western Road. So you've been doing this for like 9 years, 11
That is
years.
correct. Before my time, I heard that there was a few years, either money was tight or whatever, and we didn't get the approval to install a light. Or the priorities were just different.
Probably the latter.
Right. So, well, I am curious about maintenance issues and how those get taken care of, and whether there's any kind of warranty that comes with these systems for their internals, for things that would not be maintained by the town.
Our DPW.
Right. And particularly since there's a pretty good history here, 11 years, and it's the same devices since 2008?
Correct.
I'm laughing because we had a discussion the previous couple of years where I was looking for different manufacturers. And we pretty much settled for the manufacturer we're
Alert
using now.
systems.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All set, John? Kim? Kim, you didn't have to face your plate towards me this time.
Look at that.
That's an accomplishment.
So I know that you've done this presentation a couple of times, and new to this particular board, so if you could just clarify me, not an avid bicyclist, sorry.
That's okay.
These are the lights that blink on the road when you cross, the little white lights that went to show that somebody's coming to cross the road, correct? Okay. And the reasoning before for putting them in, was there some, I know safety obviously, but was there any accidents, or was it just other towns are doing this, or
No, I think it was just purely a safety thing.
ahead of the game type of?
Yep, trying to get ahead of the game, and it seems like everybody is doing it locally, and it's just, like I say, the right thing to do.
Okay. Okay. That's really all I had.
Mary?
So, first question, slightly off topic, but the Great Western Road, where are the lights on Great Western Road? That's Dennis,
You know where
correct?
Ironside, you know, Iron Mine Road is? There's a bog there, Sampon?
Okay, yes,
The
that
big
is
curve.
Harwich, yes, at the big
The
curve,
big
thank
curve.
you.
Yep.
Yep, all right, I'm good.
Stop and think
I've
here.
been, I was trying to think as I'm going through, and I was thinking that was Dennis, but that's not, that's still Harwich. Okay, so, I know, harkening back to David's comment, the first year I was on the committee, we had talked about there being problems with some of the earlier lights. Were those problems just the false positives?
Yes,
And that they were flashing too frequently?
yes.
Yep.
It's irritating.
And Sean's comment to me, however, we'd rather be safe than
Absolutely,
hit someone.
absolutely.
But Sean's comment was to me, he says, I'm gonna get them fixed, I'm gonna get them right, because I don't want to keep on going back. And actually, Route 39, I want to say it was last year, I think they went back twice to
Okay.
reinforce the, and I'm gonna say the steel in the
Stanchion.
cement, the stanchions that they were on, and whatever they did seemed like it worked.
Okay.
But he kept on having to go back, I guess, because of some movement, and it would fire it off.
So I am in concurrence with John. I would like to know what the warranty is on them. Because maintenance isn't part of what we can fund. So also don't want to fund something that isn't going to be able to be maintained if somebody's not building that into their regular budget.
Okay.
Clearly, it sounds like he's been able to with some of
Yeah,
it, but to
yeah.
John's point, you know, circuits fry and motherboards
They do.
disappear and fry as well. So I'd just be curious as to what the,
How do you want me to, let me make a note, you mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
Would you like me to send
Send it to,
email?
send it to Jan,
CPC.
CPC,
Okay,
Well,
and Carrie,
yours.
and Carrie you,
Oh,
Any
just send
which
it
way
to
you wanna
CPC,
do
yeah. So
send
that
it
you
to
can
Jan.
send out a blast.
yep.
I'll just give you my email real quick. What is it? 12. I'll give it to you
You'll
in a
get it,
second.
you'll get it to everybody.
Send it to
Wait,
Mike,
no.
make it, make
Send
it
it to
easy.
CPC.
CPC,
Combining two of
We're
them.
gonna have to get another computer.
Townofharwich.us, is that what it is?
I do have Jan's email.
Yeah,
Oh, you
you
do?
do. I can
Have you?
email it, yeah.
That works.
How's that?
Please.
And I'll send you a warranty, I'll
As
get that
soon as-
information.
As soon as you can,
Yep.
before our deliberations.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
That was just, those
All
were
set?
just my points.
James,
Yeah, I just have a question about exactly how those work. So they turn on, I assume, when you ride by the sensor, which is, what, approximately 40 feet away or so from the crossing?
Yes.
Or something like that. And how do they turn off?
It's a timer,
It's a timer.
it's purely a timer. And it's, I don't know, what Sean was saying, I don't know if it's preset or we set them. And he would know that answer.
Yeah. I noticed that's one of the things that happens is people aren't necessarily completely aware of what's going on.
Yep.
And they don't actually want to cross the road. So they go to, stop and take a break, take a drink of water, and cars are.
That's the worst thing, when they stop and take a break right at that corner,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden, they're setting this thing off, and they're just
Right,
sitting there taking a break.
yeah.
And that's something that we can't control, unfortunately.
Maybe some little signs here and there on the bike trail might help with that. I've noticed that happening. So,
We could consider it,
Yeah.
yeah.
that's my only comment.
Don't say, yes, it is, yeah.
All set, James.
That's it.
Joe?
So you said you had 4 more systems left to go, you think?
Correct,
And then you think you're done?
yes.
Okay. And so, it's, to dovetail off Donna's point on the systems, so say you came back next year and you wanted to do all 4, okay, let's just say.
3.
3, oh, then it would
4 more.
be, it would
Go
be
on
4
top
more
of
after
this.
this, right. So, and you made a bid out, you bid this out anyways, but you end up with the same company, right there? Okay. But you did a bid out and it was a different company, let's just say.
Yep.
Because the savings was that great. Does that mess you up in terms of alignment of all the other stuff? No, okay. So
Not at all.
they're self-supported, they're independent, they do their thing.
Correct.
And you mentioned something about software. Do you get software updates to this thing periodically?
Periodically, I think it was like every 2 years or something of that
And what
nature.
does it do?
I mean, it's purely for the head count.
Okay.
I mean, that's pretty much it,
Doesn't enhance the whole system any?
not that I know
Okay.
of.
Okay.
I wish I would have worked closer with like I said, most of it is out of my hands, as a person, I mean, I know Sean and Griffin, now Griffin being new, are the ones that are closer to the actual specifics.
Okay.
And that's who I'll be looking forward to as far as the warranties.
All right, I'm good.
Okay. I probably shouldn't, I'll wait to deliberation. Thank you very much, sir.
Oh, you're welcome. May I ask, when will deliberation happen?
We start the 3rd.
No.
It's 3rd.
Today's the
7th.
3rd.
Today's the 3rd.
We start next Thursday, the 12th. We have follow-ups we'd like that night.
Okay.
So a week from Thursday, the 12th of December. And then we might deliberate and vote, but definitely by the 16th of January, we're
You're
voting.
making final decisions.
Right. Follow-ups next Thursday.
Okay. And if you need me to come back, you'll let me know, Jim?
Yeah, well,
I'm sorry, Dave.
provide the information
Okay, I
that's
will.
requested by the board. It's as simple as that.
All right, I will.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you for correcting.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thanks,
Dave.
John.
No, that's not a problem. Not a problem. All right, next. Do you have to recuse it?
No, I don't have to
Bob.
recuse myself.
Okay.
Bob's gonna do the
So you
presentation.
Town Historic?
Recuse myself.
Okay.
First, yeah.
Yep.
Well, you don't,
Thank you,
Ted,
Tom.
it's not recusing yourself, you're
No,
just
you
giving the
just-
presentation.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any reason why you can't vote on the,
Bob Doan, Historic District and Historical Commission, representing the application we put in to do more inventory of the town's historic properties and houses. Several things we're doing is we want to update the 100-year list, which was last done about 2015, and update that through 2020. We want to do some additional adding of the forms, the information in the forms for the MACRIS database. And just so you know, the MACRIS database is supported by the Massachusetts Historical Commission. and it stands for the Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System, MACRIS, and it documents various your resources in individual towns on what they are. And they have, if you look at the handout I just gave, on the page, the information system, they have these different forms, Forms A through H, and you fill out these forms, and then they go into a state database. And I did just happen to take a snapshot of the town around us and how many of these entries they've made into the database. Chatham is by far the most advanced, and in fact, on the Cape, I think Chatham and Falmouth are have done the most work. But we're right in there based on the size of the town compared with Dennis and Brewster. But the areas are, the forms are the areas which are, it could be historic districts, but areas that might encompass multiple buildings or objects or anything. Buildings are just the actual buildings themselves, mostly residential, but they can be anything. Objects are markings. It could be an Indian rock, or it could be memorials is a popular category to document all the war memorials around town, the little parks. Burial grounds, that's cemeteries. Form F is structures, bridges, those, it's a very broad category. I see towns will put in things even like a harbor into that, even though they now have what they call Form H, which is parks and landscapes, which is where your parks and probably your things like harbors should go. But back to the application, we are asking to do the update, to give a little more information on Form B, on certain structures that we might find that more historically significant. But the big thing is to really work on the areas. We currently have 13 areas identified, and they are mostly includes the 7 villages, but there's really no documentation there. So we want to fill out that documentation more of a historical standpoint and look at the areas as clusters of older housing or historic buildings. And I brought an example of the work that's been done so far. This is a map of Harwich, North Harwich. And so what the work has to go in is they have to identify all the houses in the area that are of historic nature, either through age or some event that happened. It doesn't have to be over 100 years old. That's the benchmark Harwich typically used for, because that's part of our demolition bylaw. But these houses are identified, circled as being old. Then someone, who put this together will look at this and say, well, there's a real concentration here. So this is a cluster, and possibly it could be made into a historic area. Not necessarily a historic district, but it is a step towards that if that's the route you want to go. And the yellow ones are significant, and then the kind of pink outline, in this case, just the broad area that could be included in that area. And a Form A would be filled out with the history. All the houses would be cross-referenced into it, any stories about it would be complete. Then the town can use this for their historical planning if they see that there's an area that's very preserved very well or whatever, and could look and name that, go further into more historic type setting or documentation. The other sheet I did submit there is a example of a Form B of it was the actual Winslow Hotel in Howard Center, and talks about the historic, how the house was built, what it's comprised of. Tried documents all the things that were there, the tavern, and of course the nursing home or the assisted care was there. And you'll see these little boxes, and that means it's cross-referenced to a historic district and historic area. So it gets all tied together, so you can go to the database and pull historic area and get all the properties with it. But it is the way Massachusetts has organized so that all towns basically use the same methodology. So that's, we're asking for money to proceed with this and to add more of the documents on the areas in specific. And the application did list some different things for the cluster identification and other items that's on attachment B that we're going to look at. But we first, as a committee, have to kind of decide what direction we want to go to, put together a package that'll go out to bid for the actual work to drill down and get all the information and documentation. Yeah. That's it.
And you're all set. I'm going to lead this. Architectural style. Is that correct? Read it.
Terms- On what this is, as in other words, let's see, where is that? Italianate. Yeah, I mean, I would probably call maybe a little bit of a Greek revival in there too, but Greek revival and Italianate was often added to that, as well as Victorian. They often were combined.
Okay, that's the
So
first time.
it identifies the different styles, because everything is usually added on. And, you know, they may put a French portico on, which is more Italianate than the original Greek, revival type thing. So then you get a combination of architectures.
It's a learning session here, son.
Yeah.
Okay, next question I have. The money we rescinded last year
Right.
wasn't used for a period of time
Right.
because,
Because the committee never got around to putting everything together to put it out to bid. It was, ran out of time.
so now we have that in place.
We have much more information now so that we can, we've identified these areas that are potential clusters, so it's not like we have to start from ground zero. We have this, and so to get to the bid process is going to be much quicker. And
Okay, at a higher cost.
well, there's actually more, once we dug into it and found out some things that we didn't know about some of the other areas that I cited here, that's when it actually expanded over the previous one. Because the other one was just clusters,
Right.
but we need to update the inventory now to
Okay.
get it up to date.
Thank you, sir. Joe?
Bob, this is all new to me, so bear with me. So the 3405 is to put out the bid for a consultant of some kind?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, there's several consultants that you.
Do this.
And there's a rule of thumb of what it costs per Form B and stuff, and that's what I've used to do the estimate.
That's what I was gonna ask you.
And the areas are very difficult, because if it's only 3 structures in an area, which you can have very small areas, it'd be low cost, but if it's 20 houses in an area you identified, obviously the cost is gonna go up. So those are just broad estimates of
There's a
areas.
formula of factors to come up with this number of what
Yeah.
you need.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
It
what'll
looks like you're gonna
happen.
accomplish a lot of things.
We're going to try to, and what happens is that when you put it out to bid, we'll probably put out 10 areas that we want,
Really?
but we're going to want those bid separate prices, and they'll be in priority order. So if it comes over, we just say, no, we've got to take those off, take that off. We'll fit within the budget.
Okay.
All set? Mary?
So, a couple questions. Disclaimer for everybody who's watching. I am the chairperson of the Historic Commission, HDHC. All of the funding for the current 100-year list all predated me starting on the committee.
Oh, yes.
So I don't know the answer to the question. I don't believe with the current update, Form Bs weren't done for all of those buildings on the current update, I don't believe.
I don't know that.
Okay.
We do have to double check, but I believe they were, even if it was just entered as a one-line item.
Okay.
Or just without any history. Because a lot of the properties, when you look up on the database, just have a street address. It
Okay.
might have the architecture and the year built, and that's it.
Because, as you know, and as some of you know, we've had to take buildings off the list as
Right.
well. So some of that updating is also going to be removing those.
Hopefully, yes.
Right,
Because we'll
removing
be able
those.
to cross-reference the dates, and we're finding, obviously, the dates in the assessors database are just not always correct.
Right.
What spawned taking them off the list?
What's that?
What spawned that?
So what has happened is our demo delay bylaw requires even partial demolitions to come before historic. And we have had homeowners and builders question the age. There are some there were a number that were entered as 1915, which would have been the 100 years, because they were close. But as part of that original project, there wasn't, deep dives weren't done into those individual properties. It wasn't set up in that fashion. It wasn't required as a part of
Right.
the process. So we have found, and we have allowed homeowners to come in as a part of the demo delay and give us evidence that, no, this isn't 100 years of age.
Yeah.
An example will be 19 Schoolhouse. So that was the house that the owners of the old Sword and Shield lived in on Schoolhouse in Harwich Port. That was on as a 1915 house. The deed research shows that the Kroll family actually sold it in circa 1940 as a parcel of land, and then it was a parcel of land
Right.
with buildings thereon. So although it looked like a kid house from early 1900s from Sears and Roebuck, it really wasn't. It was built like it. So that's what.
Craftsman, yeah.
That's what the board has had to face on some of these. So there may be some that will have to come off because we voted and agreed that, yeah, the research proves that it really wasn't 100 years of age. And I will also say, when I came before this board, before I was on this board, as the new chairperson to Historic, I was asked to give an update, and I presented this board with the 100-year list. And then I was asked about the rest of the funding, and I went, what funding? Because we had turnover
That's right.
in staff. So that was part of the problem. And then really, in my own personal opinion, it was almost like the second round of funding was a little premature. We hadn't even started to work with the list before that funding was in hand. And I think now that we've worked with the list for a couple of years, Gene Steiner's also on our committee. They can both, I think, attest that we found out some of the things that need to be looked into further, and Bob has done a fantastic job of doing the legwork to put the application together and talk to town staff and try and figure out what has to get done for this project to actually happen, which is why the board voted to come forward and request the additional funding. So, my 2 cents.
Okay, I'm going to apologize to the board. I have one question just floated through my head. This is all done at the Registry of Deeds.
No, it hasn't been. That's the problem, is that the Registry of Deeds has the better information. We go on the town assessor's cards, which has the information on it, and we have one that's, for instance, an example that shows it was about, it says 1900, and that's always a suspect when it just says 1900. Well, it turns out that I actually just went and looked at Registry of Deeds and determined that the land transferred in 1926, and there was no building on the piece of land that was transferred. So we know that was just wrong in the assessor's map. The deeds are always the most correct way to go, but if you've gone through the system, it's not an easy system to track.
Is there anything that the county sets up for funding for anything like this?
I never heard of the county doing anything, no.
So they don't track, go ahead, Mary.
I had a follow-up on Bob's. We had the situation with the laundry building on Doan. And it came to us because they were gonna do work on it, and it was listed as 18
Yeah,
something, and it was clearly a typo. It was like 1950 instead of 1850. So those
Yeah.
things have happened, and
Okay.
we need to deal with them as they come up.
Yeah.
John?
Yeah, okay, so I've got to plead a little ignorance myself here. I don't, so one question is, you're talking about the historic bylaw about
Demolition delay.
So the application of that bylaw, does it depend on the thing that you're referring to as the 100-year list?
Correct.
Yes.
So
The 100-year list.
there's an internal process here at the town where someone applies for demolition permit.
Correct.
And in the chain there is
Yes.
the Historic Commission, and you refer to this 100-year list.
What happens is the building department staff, when a demolition permit comes in, they review Macris and they review the town's current 100-year inventory list. And if a property is listed, then they advise the applicant that they need to go to historic first, and they need to file a notice of intent. If the notice of intent is a public hearing under our bylaw, so it requires a butters notices and an application fee. We have tried to be a little bit user-friendly to our town residents, so that if we have a meeting that, prior to what would be a public hearing, we certainly will put them on the list and give them the opportunity to plead their case as to why they shouldn't be on that list. And we have done that as often as possible to try and streamline the process for people. But yes, the demo delay is, the 100-year list inventory list is part of the demo delay bylaw.
Okay, so in here you refer to an additional 30 structures. And is that just aspirational, or it's an estimate?
That's strictly an estimate.
So, but the intention is to end up with a complete list of every house, every structure in town that is more than 100 years old.
And we have that, it just hasn't been updated since about 2015.
It was completed in
So
15.
you want to update it because it's 4 years later, or you want
Yeah,
to?
yeah, because
Just want to add whatever?
we add the additional properties that come up, and there'll be some properties that may fall out of the area analysis. When we look at an area, there may be a house on there that says, oh, it was never put in Macris.
I see.
I'm right there with you.
Okay,
This is a different language.
yeah, okay. but I
Identify
also wanted to know
Macris,
what
please.
Macris was.
Yeah,
but
that's
you-
good. No, I want to,
Well,
Yeah.
he
Mentioned
told
it
us.
earlier.
Right.
mention it again, please.
What
Ma-
Macris?
What, yeah,
What it stands
the
for.
acronym.
So it stands for Massachusetts Cultural Resource Information System.
Okay,
And note, it's not historic, it's cultural. So it doesn't just do historic. It can do anything. You could have something built in the 50s, but because of its nature, it's important culturally that it would be in the database.
So is that part of what your objective here is, to also add cultural resources that aren't necessarily things?
Yeah, like war memorials. Those.
culture, yeah, I
Yeah,
get it. yeah.
because that's, the little parks, they've never been documented in Harwich, and I know there has been some work done by an individual who has done some documentation, but that should be all entered into the database. Now, that's not a big task, that's not gonna be expensive.
So if it was something from an individual from WW2,
Yeah,
does the demolition delay,
no.
end the question, thank you.
No, Mary, if it was a structure that we had in the database that was historically significant because an inauguration speech was given there, and it wasn't 100 years old, I think that would come under, if it's in the Macris database.
I believe so. I
Yeah.
believe that's the way it's written.
Yeah, it still comes before the Historical Commission. But I don't think we have very many of those, if any, in the database anyways.
Okay, thank you. Kim?
I was just wondering, again, forgive my ignorance as well, but I know that when Joe asked, it's some sort of formula you use for where you came up with the amount. It seems like a lot of research has already gone into it. Do you anticipate being able to complete all of these with that amount of money? It seems like an awful lot of work.
It does, but it really comes down to when they look at it and see how many properties have to have additional research.
Right.
When they do
So you don't have a
that.
consultant already?
No, I've talked to consultants, so I've gotten some ideas, but no.
So you could be potentially utilizing all the funds, but not completing everything?
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
That's really all I have.
Donna?
So, Do you keep hard copies of all this information somewhere for the public?
It's in the building
In
committee.
the building department?
Building, yeah.
Not at the library as well?
I don't, did it get to the library? I think the original
We
100-year
actually-
list is at the
We
library.
actually gave this board actually has 4-volume set of the 100-year list. Jan has it.
Yeah,
And it's also an electronic form in the building department
Right.
too, so copies can be printed anytime.
Yeah.
In terms of.
do you need a copy, is,
No, I can look at it
Okay,
electronically. I
Yeah.
think it's public funds that you're giving, and the public may have an interest in looking at this material, and not everybody wants to look at it electronically.
Right.
That's real, historians like to,
Like paper.
paper?
like paper.
Kill trees.
So do you notify, like, when you've identified the places, either the areas or the Form Bs, do you notify the homeowners?
The
or people
Bs,
that-
no, that work is done and just entered into the database.
Oh, okay. So they're never told that they're.
Not that I know of in the
until they
past. I,
potentially go
Put an
to do
application.
something with
Yeah.
their home.
And
well, they know if their house is 100 years old, they'll be on the list.
Well, apparently some
But
of them don't.
no,
well,
well, no, yeah.
so if I can follow up, I don't think any of us fully know all that was done when the original funding for that most recent update started in 2006 or
Yeah.
2008.
Yeah,
One contractor started it,
right.
something happened, found a new contractor to finish it. She finished it in the very detailed 4-volume set. I will say there is a lot of information there with what we got. But again, I don't know that everybody was notified. I don't know whether Form Bs were filled out for every single one of those houses or not. Would have to probably spot
Right.
check
Yeah.
to find out.
And do you know, was any of this information used in filing the DCPC?
I honestly don't know.
Charlene may have, I'm not sure
Yeah.
whether she included all of it.
No.
And it will.
Oh,
is it-
on the,
I
you
think-
mean,
I
you mean
think she
for the
used-
West Harwich?
For West Harwich.
Oh, yeah,
I think
that
she
is,
used the
that
ones
is
for
pretty
the
well
Captain's Row.
documented, that whole area. That is, Captain's Row is already up on Form A.
And will the information be used in the local comprehensive plan process?
That was part of the goal, is to get more, to get some,
So that was part of what we've discussed as a
Right.
board, and I've also discussed at planning,
right?
Discussed here.
and we've discussed here as well over the last 2 years, through you, Mr. Chair, is that there are component parts of the local comprehensive plan, like the housing production plan and the open space and recreation plan. Historic doesn't have one yet, so we have started talking about the fact that that's going to need to happen. And this, hopefully, with the identifying the clusters, will help the draft of that portion, which should then feed into the comprehensive
Right.
plan when that work gets going.
And can you just explain, just for everyone,
Mhm.
public, what the difference between an historic area designation and historic district designation is?
Well, historic district is voted by the town, and it has usually specific bylaws and rules for that area, which, and then, of course, then historic district, then you can, can be registered nationally, type thing, where a historic area would not have necessarily any restrictions, although like the West Harwich, there may be rules that come out of that, but it wouldn't necessarily be a historic district. This is what I understand.
Well, you said that, sort of you could segue from
Right.
being identified as an historic area to becoming an historic
Yeah.
district, so I think that's an important piece of
Right.
information.
Mhm.
Okay, and how long do you expect this project to take?
A year.
A year?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. From start, like from the time you get the funding and go through
Oh, it
the
did, yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
request for quotes? and-
Right. And availability of consultants, because every
Oh, yeah,
town's
no,
doing
they're-
it,
they're
and there's
short.
not
Yeah,
that many of
It's
them.
hard to get one right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess my other, question about the funding source, would you like to hold that for another meeting?
Yes.
Mr. Chair? Okay. Thank you.
James?
Just curious what a Form B looks like. We don't have that.
Well, actually, this is the form,
That's-
well, this is the output of the Form B.
Okay.
It's a kind of, you do an handwritten form, but it follows the same format. And there's actually a second part to a Form B that really tells a story. It could have a lot more detail. I'm thinking of a place on Bank Street that had, it was a club, and I think it was about, I don't know if it was riots, but the whole movement for anti-slavery took place in that building. And so that's a very important historic thing that you document, which wouldn't be on this first page, but would be in the addendum. In fact, we were just at a meeting, a workshop at the commission, they were really stressing, you got to do this extra part and get the better story behind it, tell the story of the property or the object or whatever.
Would you expect the consultants to do that?
Yeah, but we're not asking to do a lot of that. There's some money here I had allocated to do more in-depth dive, but that would be in conjunction with a cluster that may warrant more information about a certain property in a cluster. So there's a little money for that, but we're not going to go through it. We're not asking to go through all the Form Bs and try to do that at this point.
Right. But for the new ones, the
Yes.
30 or so.
Well, yeah, and if they're part of this story. I mean, if they're going to be part of the cluster, probably.
All right, thank you.
I'll say, James.
Yeah.
Anything else for the rest of the board?
Yeah.
Rob,
have a
good, good.
So is there any, like, academic interest in this sort of thing? That is, are there universities or history departments in universities in, like, southeastern Massachusetts who would be interested in this, or who would be interested in supplying cheap graduate students to do this kind of work?
Good question. There are historic preservation programs in major universities. I don't know of any in southeastern Mass, but I wouldn't be surprised if Amherst has a program.
So what kind of training does a consultant that gets hired to do this work have? Do they have a history degree, or are they just somebody random who's done this a bunch of times?
I'm going to give you some leeway here.
They definitely have to know architecture, the different styles during the different periods, because that's part of the identification is through architecture. In fact, that's what the last one did. In fact, that's in part why the one house on School Street, because it looked very authentic of a period, and it wasn't.
I see.
Yeah.
But through you, Mr. Chair, if I may, that's also part of the RFP process, is to review the consultants
Right.
and see what their qualifications are and
Background.
and whether they are an appropriate person to do the job, along with background checks and reference checks. So that's part of that whole request for proposals. This isn't something that would be bid, it would be a proposal based on their qualifications, so.
Thank you.
John?
I'm done.
Anybody? Donna?
Just, do you have a town archivist? Does the town of Harwich have an archivist?
I married, I have never heard of one.
Not to my knowledge,
Okay, thank you.
unless we're calling Ginny Hewitt our archivist as our
No,
as
I
our
mean,
public
it's
librarian.
usually, like,
Right, I mean, not that I've known of,
Meeting.
right, not that I've heard or seen at a town meeting or anything either.
Ginny's filled in for everything else.
Exactly.
I don't know if she's filled in for that.
Exactly.
All right, thank you, sir, for your presentation. Welcome back to the board.
Do we know if the others are here?
Okay.
What time is it? 6:57. That's why we did that time, wherever that is. Oh, up here, sorry. 6:40, so we're cool.
If they're here.
Are they?
I don't know, somebody has to find out. Can I request a 5-minute recess?
Go ahead. We're going to take a
I move that
5-minute
we take a 5-minute
recess.
recess.
We didn't do the first thing on the agenda, which was approving minutes.
Yeah, we could go back to do, I stepped right over that.
That's right, you have to come back in anyway.
We're going to come back in anyway. Let me go check
No,
and see if,
we weren't gonna come in
We-
afterwards.
We didn't move into executive session
We
yet.
haven't
We're
gone
just
into
taking the.
We're taking a rest.
we just took a
Recess.
5-minute recess. And by the way, folks, we're taking a 5-minute recess, but the microphones are still on.
As are the cameras.
What I meant, Mary, was, once we finish with the executive session.
Yeah,
we're-
but we could do it before we go into executive session.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming, Jean. Yeah, hang on, I'll come out. I'll come out. Or not. Can I say bye?
You can come this way.
It's shorter this way, trust me.
Okay. Oh, my hand hurts.
I saw you writing and.
Well, I write all the time. Just open them.
Okay. Not a problem. Grab your, put your names here before you sit down, please.
Or you can sit down and then I'll pass it, eh?
So we're going to identify everybody?
Yes, I am. Nice to see you. I know.
And Jay.
Sorry.
So go ahead and have a seat.
You have to step away for this.
Okay.
That's right.
On the other side?
You're on the other side.
And we're so official.
Are you gonna, so, while we're still in recess, are you going to come back in and approve the minutes?
Yeah, we'll do that first.
All right.
Then we'll go into executive session.
And you've got to re-announce that you're not coming back, that we're gonna just
I will do
adjourn.
that.
So we'll just do minutes right when we start again. So
I will do
2
that.
minutes in of the 5-minute recess.
Oh, we can't be.
We've already used 2 minutes of
Oh,
the
I thought you
5.
said 10. I was like, we can't have done 10.
You know, talk to you in a minute, eh? Well, at the end. All right.
Do you have an idea when we started this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she said we're 3 minutes in, is my guess
We're now 3
Okay.
into the 5. We don't have to be away 5.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
So once you say it.
I've announced
all right.
it, so.
Okay.
You can't shorten it. You can
Once
go
you
longer,
announce
but
it.
you can't shorten it.
Why are you different? H1, Form B. So, 1 more minute.
You must have it over here. Ian.
That's fine.
I need to poke at it too.
Okay, I'm going to call the board back to order after our recess. Can I have approval of the minutes for the CPC November 21, 2019? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes as written?
Any discussion? Any reviews? All taken care of?
All taken care of.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's a motion. Okay, again, we're going to go into executive session, and when we come out of executive session, we're going to adjourn. So, can we roll call this board first to go into executive session? And then we'll roll call,
So we need a motion to go into executive
all right, go
session.
ahead.
So I move that we enter executive session as detailed on the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
We can roll call.
Aye.
Now you have to roll call.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you do have to roll call.
Yeah. I,
Go ahead.
Aye.
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 I,
Aye.
And,
You should note that James
James, yeah, you should note that James has
recused himself,
recused himself.
yeah.
or to
We
the
need
other.
to stop the recording.
Okay, Madam Chairman, would you like to call your board to
Yes,
order?
But
Please.
I think maybe,
After they.
maybe, yeah.
Is there a motion to go into executive session?
So move.
Second? Second. All in favor, James?
Aye.
Marcia? Aye. Dave?
Yes.
Yes. We're in executive session.